briefing of the APEC 22nd Automotive Dialogue. First, we will have the statement from the chair of the dialogue. This year's Auto Dialogue chair is the Board of Investments Director, Maria Corazon, Halili, Dichosa. Also present right now is the Vice Chair of the APEC 22nd Automotive Dialogue, Mr. Vicente T, who is also currently the President of the Philippine Automotive Federation. So we'll have the statement from Director Dichosa.
Thank you, Doris. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have just concluded the 2.5 days of discussions on issues affecting the global automotive industry that include market access, regulations, and standards, including a one-day workshop that focused on the integration of SME automotive parts suppliers into the global value chains, or the GVCs. We are satisfied with the discussions we had on SME supplier development, which revealed that OEMs are now actively and directly involved in capability build-up programs in their entire value streams, down to their Tier 2 and Tier 3 SME suppliers. The sharing of experiences by SMEs also revealed that suppliers who have successfully penetrated the export markets have utilized innovation and technology to move to higher value products to capture new markets. So these are the things that we've actually tackled in the workshop. And SMEs are increasingly becoming aware that they need to find their appropriate roles in the GVCs in order to survive the intense competition. However, the discussions also confirmed that there are still constraints to SME integration and must be addressed following an actionable agenda to be implemented under a cooperation framework among governments, suppliers, and vehicle manufacturers in each APEC economy. We are happy to share that the AD approved the SME survey project to be led by Malaysia, which shall gather information as well as the challenges faced by APEC SMEs to be presented at the next AD meeting in September 2015. The results of this survey shall become the basis for the work plan that will be presented in the next APEC leaders meeting. The AD has also adopted the Philippine proposal on developing a compendium of the automotive industry information in APEC economies, aimed at empowering APEC SMEs to penetrate automotive GVCs through the updated trends and the knowledge on the automotive markets in the APEC region. This proposal will build on the compilation done by the United States on the APEC-wide taxation regimes. The APEC AD is also gearing up on the development of the electric vehicles roadmap to be led by the United States. The AD members have already agreed on the elements of the roadmap, and inputs coming from the APEC economies are expected by this May. The initial draft of the EV roadmap will be presented during the next AD meeting. The APEC AD will be busy in the next 4 months working on these major initiatives on SMEs and EVs, and we expect the strong commitment of the APEC member economies in pushing these initiatives forward. We definitely look forward to the significant developments to be presented at the next AD meeting in September 2015. So thank you very much, and Mr. Mills and I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Dichosa. At this point, we'll have your questions, but please state your name and the name of your media outfit first. Okay, may we have your questions now at this point?
No questions?
Any questions from the floor? Or Mr. Mills will just have a statement?
Questions muna, baka naman huwag nating unahan.
Impromptu statement again
Oh,
of
yeah,
Mr.
impromptu
Mills.
again. I'll do a roll call. Okay, we'll have Mr. Mills.
Wala pa munang question. Sige, I can try to give my point of view from the private sector. Okay, as you know, APEC, all of these efforts are supposed to move all of the countries in the Asia Pacific who border the Pacific Ocean to become unified as one market and encouraged to trade freely among them. So the reason we joined this is because we want to participate in that larger market that will evolve in the future. Hindi pa ito, no? This is not yet there. Among the products that are very much traded anywhere else in the world is the automotive sector. And the automotive sector is something that is an industry that uses a lot of small and medium scale companies. No? The brand principles of the automotive sector, the Toyotas, the Hondas, the GMs, the Fords, all use a whole array of parts and components makers that are made up of large, medium, and small companies. Okay? And that is why the automotive industry is of interest to most economies. Almost all economies have an automotive industry because the industry benefits all the whole economy. You know, it's not only the users of cars, also not only the manufacturer of cars, but everybody in the economy. It has one of the highest, according to the economists, a trickle-down effect. It multiplies 1 peso spent in the automotive production of vehicles has a 2 or 3 times multiplier. I don't exactly remember what, but depends on the cost structure of the country. It's double or triple what the investment in that company is. The purpose of all of these APEC discussions is to harmonize standards so that trade can be easier done. Okay, as you can imagine, every country or every economy has their own rules about specifications of vehicles, emissions, etc., dimensions. So trying to harmonize this, not making it equal, but at least logical in some way, is a major effort which we have to do together with the governments and private sectors of all of these economies in APEC. That's one of the biggest activities, and that's a continuing activity. The other major activity is developmental in the sense of helping these SMEs, not only from the Philippines, but from ASEAN, even from SMEs in the developed economies of APEC, to give them a chance to develop more business. As you know, the parts makers of the big brand principals have their own affiliate parts makers, but that is not our point of interest. Those guys can take care of themselves. Our interest is the tier 2, they call the smaller companies, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 2, tier 3 companies, meaning a small company produces a small part, okay, maybe a tornillo, which goes to the tier 2 guy who now builds a module, which now goes to a tier 1 guy who's the big, for example, if it's an air conditioner, the guy who makes the small wires that go into the air conditioner is given to the second level guy who makes the compressor, and that one is given to the ultimate air conditioner assembly that is installed in a car or in a truck. So these tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 even companies are what is of interest today to the leaders of APEC. Before, this group has felt to be left out of the big picture because in globalization, usually the companies that are able to benefit most are the big companies. No? Now the APEC leaders are focusing on the SMEs, how to get them to participate meaningfully. Meron naman silang benta, pero pa konti-konti. More meaningfully participate in the business of globalization. And in the automotive sector, this is very crystal clear in that many small companies do supply to each other. And this favorite term now is the supply chain. Okay, that supply chain is the most meaningful definition in the automotive industry because pasa-pasa yan. Okay, a small company sells to the bigger sells to and finally to the assembly plant of the brand. So that is the main focus, one of the main focuses of our automotive dialogue, how to establish the assistance programs to make it more possible for these guys to really increase their business. Among the two things, as Director Cory said, is this compendium of parts and components makers that we're now gathering or started to be gathered, and we will keep building up so that these are made available to all the brand principals who have factories in different countries. Incidentally, the reason this is now important is before, all the Japanese had their factories in Japan, all the Koreans have their factories in Korea, all the Americans their factories in the States. Now it's no longer like that. Okay, it's now most of these brand principals locate new factories all over the place in ASEAN. They are in in Thailand, in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, although still to a lesser degree in the Philippines, and that is why we're trying to attract them here. But also all the other brand principals, the Europeans are also in Asia and in India. The Chinese are still not coming out because they're just new into the industry, but the American companies have factories or have taken over companies in Asia, in Europe, and in South America to spread out the factories, their production capabilities. So now this is a whole network, and if there's any industry that can contribute largely to the development of their local economies where they operate, it is the automotive industry. You know? As you can see, Thailand in particular is an example in ASEAN. Many of the Japanese, American brand principals put up factories there. And as you can see, Thailand has been growing by leaps and bounds over the past decade or so, primarily on the manufacturing sector. We are trying to now, with the efforts of Secretary Domingo and the BOI DTI team, have this manufacturing resurgency program, hopefully to also participate again more meaningfully in that segment. So the auto dialogue really fits into the scheme of things, in that we're trying to help these SMEs expand their business, but not only to transactions. No, maganda rin yung makabenta sila ng isa, dalawang shot. Okay, but the point is to be integrated into the supply chain, to be part. For example, a factory, a Toyota, for example, will make a particular model. They will need that part not only today, okay? Hindi lang bibili ng ilang piraso yan kasi kailangan namin. It's going to be a continuing purchase. So we're hoping that many of these parts makers become really integrated into the supply chain, so that tuloy-tuloy ang negosyo, so that they too can make the investments required. Because the problem is to be included in that integrated supply chain, they have to make investments. And sometimes you can't blame them for not making investments kasi hindi sigurado eh. Pa isa-isa, makabenta ako ngayon, baka next month, wala na. But if they're integrated into the supply chain, then that's another matter. Then they can relax, they can invest long-term because they know as long as they meet the usual targets of price, quality, delivery, they will be in the network. And then they can invest for long-term. And that, again, is one of the objectives of this AD, to find out what are those gaps that we can encourage the parts makers to cover, and then convince the brand principals to recognize that and, of course, start dealing with them on a long-term basis. So yun ang mga ginawa dito sa AD na ito, primarily SME focus to help them get integrated into the global value chain of these brands, and then of course harmonization efforts of these standards and rules, because each economy nga has different rules that would impact tariffs and duties on particular product, which makes a product more expensive or less expensive, and is a trade barrier. No? Yun ang gusto natin tanggalin, yung mga trade barriers na yan. So this is a continuing effort, incidentally. Not one meeting does this. Every proposals are made, and then objections happen, and from both government or the private sector in that economy. So it's a continuing effort. No? And that is what BOI, DTI, and the private sector here tries to participate in, to try to see how to accelerate such reduction of tariff barriers and transaction problems, so that the local industry can grow. Napahaba yung...
Okay lang yun. Actually, in addition, probably, sinasabi natin, we're actually helping SMEs to be integrated in the value chain, but not necessarily only through the brand principles. Actually, SMEs can be direct exporters themselves, right? Yeah. And one of the idea nga dun sa compendium natin is really to provide a lot of the information on each of the market economy or economies of in the APEC region. Particularly, we want to start a good guidebook for the SMEs, if they want to enter a certain market, at least the basic information on how to access that market, what are the tariffs, what are the tax structures, and what are the different government support programs also are available. At least that would provide the SMEs an idea already whether this is the right market for them, and hopefully it will be easier for them to penetrate if ever they decide to enter that market. Now, siguro just to add on also doon sa regulation, we've been saying that one of the deliverables of this AD for 2015 is the electric vehicles roadmap. Just to clarify, the electric vehicles roadmap that we're saying is not like the road mapping that we're doing here in the BOI, yung industry road mapping natin. The EV roadmap that we're actually looking at for the AD is actually focused also on harmonization of standards and regulation. The main idea of that roadmap is really to facilitate the promotion of what we call the new energy vehicles, like the sa atin sa e-vehicles, in the markets of the Asia-Pacific region. What we're targeting really is if we can harmonize the markets, we can actually harmonize some of the components so that merong interoperability of the EVs in any of the markets in the Asia-Pacific region. Kumbaga sabi nga nila, sample sana yung plug or yung socket in the Philippines could also be used in any of the Asia-Pacific. Hindi na siya magiging issue. So there could also be a development of the market within the Asia-Pacific region. So that's in relation to our agenda naman din on sustainable development or sustainability. So yun, kasi baka others would think now when we're speaking of EV roadmap, it's like focus on industry development on electric vehicles for the Asia-Pacific. It's actually more of promotion and facilitating the use of new energy vehicles in the Asia-Pacific region. Yun. So,
Okay, thank you, Director Dichosa. Mr. Mills, you will add some more before I call the more questions from the floor.
Maybe let's wait for questions.
Okay, maybe we'll have questions from the floor at this time. Okay, sir.
My name is Dario Agnote of Kyodo News, Japanese news agency. In your to Director Dichosa, you mentioned earlier that that during the discussions there were you identified the remaining constraints to SMEs global integration that needs to be addressed. Can you elaborate a little bit on this, and can you identify these constraints right now? What are the most important ones?
well, one is on the something to do with human development, human resources development, particularly some of the brand principles we're seeing. One of the difficult the constraints really for SMEs to participate is we lack the design capability. When brand principals look for suppliers, they also look for the capability that the parts makers actually can develop and design the parts they need for the motor vehicle. What happens if we lack that design capability, the brand principal can actually supply it, and then they actually do the commercialization of that. But it takes, I think, 3 to 4 years before you can actually develop a part supplier. But if it is the brand principal that would supply that design or drawing, they would be limited to that brand principal only, so they will not be able to develop economies of scale. But if we can develop that design capability for the auto parts supplier, they can do it on their own. They can probably supply not only to that specific brand principal, but to the other automakers as well. So they can build economies of scale. That's one. Second is they don't know how to actually access information on the different standards that they need to comply with. So in effect, it will be required them also research and development, which a lot of SMEs have difficulty as well, particularly if it costs them a lot before they can actually develop the parts. So it goes hand in hand in developing the quality of the parts. It may require a lot of R&D. It will be requiring financing on their part. And then also, not all raw materials are actually available here in the Philippines. That's one. So for an SME to develop, to import a certain volume just to supply the requirements may not be also feasible. There might be some consolidation that you need to do, or the brand principals have to import it by themselves and just supply it to the SMEs. So these are the things that we have to look at and probably see how government can actually do interventions to help these SMEs. But these are the things that actually came out during the workshop.
Okay, another question from the floor? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Celerina Monte from the Daily Manila Shimbun. Ma'am, you have mentioned about this roadmap on electric vehicles. So where are we now, and what have you achieved so far during your 2.5-day meeting regarding this particular
Roadmap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, for the EV roadmap, what we have agreed for this AD meeting is the survey, the template that we will be using. And the template actually contains 10 points that each economy has to answer. It has something to do with technical cooperation required. It has something to do with regulatory cooperation, harmonization efforts, some other technical areas that will have to be brought up if we are to understand each other economy's systems currently in relation to the NEVs, or the new electric energy vehicles. That 10-point template will be answered by each economy, and each economy will have to submit it to the US during this intersessional period between this AD and the next AD. So we're looking at May for all inputs to be in, and it is expected by before the next AD, we will have the initial draft roadmap already. So at this point in time, what we have is an agreed template that each economy will have to accomplish and submit to the US. And then intersessionally, we will have to work on the initial draft. And then the first presentation of that will be done in the next AD meeting.
Okay, we have a follow-up question. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not so familiar about that roadmap.
Yes.
So when is the target? Like, when do we expect that roadmap?
The final document, there's no complete date, but we're targeting to have the first initial draft by September, which is the tentative schedule for the next AD.
Okay, thank you, Director Dichosa. Any more questions from the floor? Mr. Mills, want another statement from your end?
No, maybe let me add to what Director Corey said. No? I think there is some misunderstanding of what that roadmap is. No? The roadmap is not to, I think, produce an electric vehicle. No? As you know, right now, there are n number of efforts in developing electric vehicles, okay? Within the US, Ford, GM, Chrysler are developing their own electric vehicles. Some are pure plug-in electric, the others are hybrid, the others are hydrogen powered. Japan is also doing all of that. So is Europe, so is Korea. So are some of our guys locally are making, using lead acid batteries for some of these. So sa lahat ng yan, there's so much going on. The decision was, the agreement in Asia Pacific was, hey, let's make nga a checklist of what we are all doing, okay? Before we even start to decide where and what to standardize and what to harmonize. Because there's so many features, the battery, the connectors, the dimensions, the safety features. So that survey will ask these questions, and we'll compile that, and hopefully from there decide on, okay, 7 items is what we'll have to focus on. Kasi yun ang importante. The others, we leave it to the manufacturer of that particular vehicle. Kasi we cannot naman control everything, no? So, or it's not useful to try to control everything. You want to give people or designers the freedom to design what they want. Okay, but hindi naman pwedeng labo-labo lahat. No? So, for example, the most easy example is the connectors. Just like your cell phones, di ba nakakainis, one brand, you need to buy a special connector to charge. Although now, they're more or less standardized, I think 2 or 3. Apple has their own, Android has their own. Ganun din sa electric vehicle. No? So maybe we'll decide finally after the survey it's only 5 items or 7 items need to be standardized. Then recommendation from the technical side will say, okay, to how do we standardize that? Okay, this dimension. There, for example, on plugs, there are standards, E1275, maraming standards na yan. So decide on 1 or 2, and then other points, and then get the respective governments, okay, of APEC to approve those. Remember, regulations have to be in the law. Okay, it's not only whatever the industry and a association like APEC will decide. Then each economy will now bring that to their legal structure and say, okay, regulations here, all EVs should have this. So that is the long process. No? But that does not try to limit the creativity of all of these brand owners or individuals who are creating new vehicles. No? For example, in the States now, this Telsa made their own, okay, and completely on their own, and now they're having problems also, or not problems. Charging stations is the big point of the impact of electric vehicles. So, if there are no standards, then every charging you'll have. Would you imagine a unique gasoline station now that you can only go to this gasoline station because that's what fits your car? Now the gasoline stations, whatever the brand is, are the same. Okay, maybe there's some difference in each one. That is the direction of EV also. That's what will happen in the future. So that is what the APEC group is now trying to standardize. Hey, let's slow down a bit and then agree on some things, because if not, labo-labo yan, no? And hopefully it will develop in that direction so that ultimately the users, whether it's a plug-in or hydrogen or whatever, gas, LPG, there is a more standardized area where it is going to be convenient for the ultimate user to use that vehicle, hindi problematiko. No? So that's the direction of that roadmap.
Thank you, Mr. Mills, for that wonderful clarifications. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Ma'am Dichosa. I would just like to ask, you mentioned earlier about having a proposal on the compendium of information. Ma'am, can you elaborate more on this? Like how are you going to operationalize it aside from the fact that you're going to have a guidebook?
Yung sa compendium, actually, kasi every automotive dialogue meeting, each member economy update each other in terms of market, how size their market is, what's the production value, sales volume. They update us on the FTAs. Each economy is actually currently they have, and actually currently ongoing negotiations. And specifically, the intention really is for the member economies, because this AD is attended both by government and the private sector. So each economy updates us on that one. And the intention really is to compile all these presentations into just one document that can be accessed by any business operator within the Asia-Pacific region. It will also include, for example, each economy, they also present their tax structures as to, for example, the fuel or the petroleum or and then the excise taxes for each of the motor vehicles. Under the FTAs, they actually say whether the tariffs are reduced for the CBUs or the parts and components. So these are actually information that's being presented every automotive dialogue. But they actually, they are left as presentations during the AD. So what we want to do right now is compile everything, and we're asking the APEC Secretariat to do that. Compile it, everything that's presented, and put it into one document that we can actually provide to SMEs who wants this information, particularly if they're interested to enter a certain market within APEC, something like that. And that would be updated every time there is a new presentation being done by each economy. And if, for example, there is an industry association in another economy, they can also be informed on, for example, what could be available in our markets. Like as Mr. Mills mentioned earlier, it could also serve as a database of what's available inside a certain market. if, for example, one brand principal would be interested in investing in the Philippines, for example, he would already know the basic information of what's the auto regime in our country, and particularly if there's the structure of the supply chain as well, then at least that would already facilitate his sort of like background checking or investigation in a certain market. So I think that would be a good input to the SMEs who are planning to expand their operations either domestically or internationally.
Okay, thank you, Director Dichosa. Any more questions? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, Amy Remo from Inquirer. Ma'am, from the 2.5 days, were there any recommendations that came up regarding and exactly concrete measures on how you will address these constraints that you have identified? What are the initial reforms that you're looking at least not just the Philippines but for the whole APEC?
Right now, we don't have the specifics because there's another project, we call it the GSAS. It's actually a proposal coming from the Philippines and Malaysia. It also involves a survey, and as agreed also in the APEC meeting, we will be, each economy will be required to also accomplish that survey. And in that survey, actually, we will be also seeing the specific constraints on each economy perspective. And hopefully after the compilation of the survey responses, we will be able to identify already what could be the priority actions. So right now, we still have different systems, different regulations within each economy, and I think it would be good if we'll have the details coming from that survey. So probably before this year ends, probably before the AD 23, we will have those information.
Okay, thank you. Can we have the last question? Okay, no more questions from the floor. Would you like to give final statements, Director Dichosa and Mr. Mills, if you have any?
Maybe just a side comment to what Director Dichosa said. No? The survey or the effort of this project that the Philippines and Malaysia are undertaking for the automotive sector is a 2-year project. This year, we will finish this survey. And the purpose of the survey really is to find out sino ba yung mga SME yan, okay? What kind of companies are they, what are they producing, where are they, what are their volumes now? So when we know that, then with that data, next year is when we formulate 2016. It's a 2-year effort. 2016 naman, with data, that's when we formulate together with, or we try to formulate together with the rest of the AD, what interventions from the private sector, from government, would be really useful to target this group. No? For example, just the definition of what SMEs are was already an argument. No? Not an argument, discussion, because APEC has a definition. Is it based on sales, I think, of 100 million per year?
People.
But the comments from the other economies was, wait, the SMEs in your country are very big. Sa amin, hindi na SME yan, while the SMEs in other countries are really small. No? So let's see first what is available. What are these SMEs? So acting on data rather. This is incidentally one of the main thrusts that we're starting to realize. Do not stop making policy decisions or policy directions based on gut feel. Okay? Ang feeling ko, anong kailangan natin ng SME? Sino ba yung mga SME nga? Anong ginagawa nila? And that is the effort now. Then once you know that hard numbers, then the policy recommendations can be more focused. Can be, for example, education. Okay, marami sinasabi. What education? Do we need more managers? Do we need more welders? Okay, I think we need more welders. As a matter of fact, there's a shortage of that now. No? So even directions on education or skills training and the kind of skills training. Okay, I think we've already had TESDA type things. They're going on for years and years and years. Okay, pero kulang pa rin. We need to augment it, make it more practical, make it directly usable. I think inputs like that can happen only from a detailed survey, and that's what is done. Then next year, okay, intensive discussions on what kind of interventions from the private sector. Incidentally, on the private sector, it's not only government. No? The government is saying, hindi lang kami naman, dapat kayo rin. No? So the private sector is starting to go into that. No? For example, Toyota and Mitsubishi are setting up schools, Isuzu also, and other companies, precisely for very specific finishing school type courses para directly usable kaagad ang mga taong graduate doon. So things like this are among the initial efforts, but there's so many other interventions needed for these SMEs to really, like they say, have integration into the global value chain of these brand principles. Incidentally, this is how Japan grew. No? But in Japan, they did that by themselves. Okay, Toyota Group has a whole chain of parts which they support on the long term, and therefore these smaller firms were willing to invest in this because that particular part, let's say radiator, o ikaw ang gagawa ng radiator for this model, mag-invest na siya ng state-of-the-art equipment. Incidentally, that is one of the things that came out. We can no longer, it's too late now to just invest in manual machines to do this. Kailangan state-of-the-art, computer control, or whatever it is, state-of-the-art equipment. If not, you cannot meet the quality or the cost or the speed of development type targets required by the brand principles. Because now, model lives are changing so fast. Okay, if a model before was 5 years, now it's only 3 years. After that, they have to change model. So the time also to develop is becoming fast. And then, as Director Dichosa said, design capability. In the past, there's two styles of working with SMEs. No? Either the brand principal designs it with drawings and detailed specs, and they say, oh, sige, i-bid out mo ito. How much can you do this? Or, from the start, the brand principal says, okay, I need a radiator for this model. This model is this big. Ikaw na mag-design ng radiator itself. Just supply it to me, and that it can meet, I will test it. If it can meet the standard, I'll buy it from you. So that means that kind of that kind of SME has to have design capabilities. That is where we're moving to. Okay, the world is moving to. It's not only us. So that's why we have to help these SMEs also develop that. Now, to develop that, it takes investment and chicken and egg. So there, maybe government will have to intervene and help set up, which is what DOST now is starting to do. They're setting up a testing center and a design center for tooling. Bago ito, last year lang, no? Last year. So they invested in that, and now it's made available to SMEs to use, to bring to them and let them, teach them how to use that machine, or actually do the actual tool for them so that they can use that when they manufacture their product. So that kind of mixed intervention is only the start, and has to be expanded to a greater degree so that truly these SMEs graduate from papa mama shops to really be able to invest long term, but with that investment be really included in the supply chain of a brand principal. So yun ang direksyon.
Okay, Director Dichosa.
For me, I guess yung gusto lang natin stress yung point na we've been pushing this SME agenda, and we really intend to focus all efforts in helping SMEs go international business. And I think this is also in relation to the thrust of this administration, which is inclusive growth. As mentioned earlier, we have a manufacturing resurgence program in the DTI-BOI, and even that program is going to be aligned with how we want really to develop our SMEs in the sectors that we want to develop, and hopefully they can really go beyond borders and really be integrated into what we call the GVCs, or the global production networks. So even if, for example, what they're saying is for some industries, the domestic market is quite small, they will not be limited to that. But instead, they would consider having economies of scale and really consider exporting, not just in the ASEAN or Asian market, but also the Asia-Pacific market and even beyond. So the government is here, and basically all these initiatives and efforts would allow us really to understand more the SMEs and hopefully the other APEC economies markets, and help us in really developing the local industries here in the country. So I guess that's it.
Thank you, Director Dichosa. Thank you, Mr. Mills. And thank you, everybody, for attending this press briefing. The next automotive dialogue will be in
September.
September this year in Cebu City. See
Along
you
the-
in Cebu.
Yes.
Thank you. Good work.
Good work sa ating dalawa. One more.
Parang may na-award
Oo nga, para tayong merong pinag-usapan.